Back in the day before the Knights of Ren, there's a story to tell about a boy named Ben. Started off cool but ended up in the fire, living in the shadow parents that fought the empire. Daddy moved freight, mama sat on the throne. Heard the story, daddy's a hero, but daddy was gone. Big Luke came through, snatched him up swift. Said the force is strong with you, so consider it a gift. 2 Jedi in the family, you could do the math. Had the engines on before Ben decided his path. Return of the Jedi, about to do them.
Welcome back to another canon spoiler talk. Today we're talking about Star Wars The Last Jedi. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is like the third or fourth take. Oh my God, I've been having technical problems. I done did like 4 or 5 spoiler reviews. But I think I finally worked out the kinks in what I want to talk about. So that's good. But this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen it, go to the comment section. Check out the non-spoiler review. Last and only warning. We about to spoil this thing. So I'm going to jump into the negatives and talk about some of the things that really work for me. So number 1, we got what the Force expansion was like in this movie. And what I mean by that is that going into the original trilogy and the prequels and all that, a lot of the hardcore diehard Star Wars fans, which I'm not one of them. I love Star Wars, but I'm not diehard. They will tell you the best thing about it is that you didn't have to explain the Force. The Force was ambiguous. Best example is in the prequels, we get midichlorians, which is the measure of how much Force is in you. And we learn that Anakin Skywalker is born purely of midichlorians. So a lot of people cry foul saying, we don't want it explained, we don't want to quantify it, we just want the Force to be ambiguous. And I can understand as a prequel baby, because I was young at the time, I like that they explain the rules, but I can understand the original OG fans that say, hey, we don't need it explained. So I could get both sides of it. But when we get to this movie, we get not a subtle expansion of the Force, but an explosion. Because the Force has always been kind of, like I said, kind of quiet. You know, I can sense you. I can sense your feelings. You know, I can move things. I can do this and that. Force lightning might be a little advanced, but that's only a few people. But for the most part, the Force is very quiet. It's very subtle. It's the connection between all living things, which we hear from Rey in this movie. You know, it's light and dark. It's warmth and cold. It's, you know, life and death. All that. And this movie blows it out of the water. Number 1, we got Leia. She gets blown into space, not by Kylo Ren, who hesitates, but we see her floating in space, and she awakens and flows through space. A lot of people saying like the Wicked Witch. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's Mary Poppins. I don't know if it's Harry Potter. I don't know what it is. But it looks weird. It doesn't look Star Wars. She floats through space back into the ship. And not only that, but she survives being in deep space and freezing. And it's just like, when have we ever saw that? When did they ever set up that a Jedi can float through space and be okay? Because when we have seen that before, nobody can do that. Not even the most powerful people. And Leia has always been quiet. She's always been, you know, I can sense Luke. You know, Force sensitive, Force users, Force aware, all these terms are sacred to the fans because it matters. It matters the distinction, and this movie blows it up. Furthermore, we get this connection between between Rey and Kylo, where they can hashtag Force Skype. I'm saying it's Force Skype. They can see each other, they can talk to each other, but you know, they don't know where each other is at and all that good stuff. But eventually it becomes physical, where the water from the island is hitting Kylo's face, where they can touch hands, all this stuff. And it's just like, where the hell did this come from? We've never set this up as a Force power. And I like the prequels that it expanded things, where we can see them run fast, jump high. We've seen them mind trick in the original trilogy. We've seen them move things in the original trilogy, but the prequels kind of expanded a little bit. And again, the hardcore fans cry foul. We don't need to expand this thing, But in this movie, they exploded, and I don't know how I feel about it. And so this is a new power. We see it not only with them, but with Luke Skywalker. Luke can see Kylo and Rey talking to each other through the Force, and then later on, he projects himself into the main fight. Into the main fight. And so I still sit here and say, I don't know how I feel about this because it's such out of left field. Now, a lot of people tell you Luke was training, all these years. He's the most powerful Jedi. He can do these things. And even Kylo points out it can't be Rey that creates this connection because it would kill her. So Snoke is the one that creates this connection, we find out. And it's just high level Force stuff. It's not something anybody can do. But again, it's just kind of out of left field. So speaking of Snoke, though, this kind of leads me to my next negative. Snoke dying, I'm okay with. How he died, I'm not okay with. You really just take a time to look at it. Look at what Snoke did and the powers he had versus how he died. So again, this new power of Force Skype is new. And only person we see in the movie that can do it is Luke, who's supposed to be the most powerful Jedi. But yet, not only does Snoke project images into people's head, he does it between two people that's not himself without them even knowing. That has to take a tremendous amount of power. And then when Rey comes to his lair, he tosses her like a rag doll. She tries to take the lightsaber. He whips it around, hits her in the head, and takes it from her. When Kylo gets chewed out by Snoke, and he's calling him a child, and Kylo gets pissed like usual. Snoke shuts him down. It's easy for Snoke. He doesn't even have to move. He is that powerful. He used Force lightning. Again, only the second person we're really seeing with that. And it's just like, he has so much power, but yet Kylo kills him. Kylo kills him by manipulating the same lightsaber that he just shut down from Rey. And it's just like, seriously, he shuts down Kylo all the time, but yet this time he can't beat him. Now, people will say, that's hubris, as our favorite word. That's him being cocky. And I don't know. I don't like the way it happened. I don't like the way they set it up. Because in a movie, when you kill somebody dramatically, it comes out of nowhere. But in this movie, it was so telegraphed like Hollywood movies. I can't be betrayed. I can't be beaten. I see Kylo's every move. He's going to strike down his true enemy. I'm like, that is stupid. We know he's about to kill you. And so, I don't know. I really didn't like that execution wise. And I also didn't like the concept that somebody so powerful just dies by Kylo. And maybe it's more annoying because we never find out at all who Snoke is, where he comes from, how he's so powerful, and then they just kill him. So I don't like that. The next sticking point, the humor in this movie, and here's the biggest thing. The humor is not bad. The humor is pretty good. However, humor being good and being needed is two separate issues. There's lots of times where I feel like we did not need humor in serious moments. It's not to say it wasn't funny, it's just we didn't need it. And one part that I really stick with is when we got the final battle on Crate, and Rey, I keep calling Rey, Kylo, out of pure emotion, says, fire everything, every gun we got at that man when Luke shows up. And they fire all these shots, and And then Hux looks at him and says, well, you think you got him? I'm like, oh my God, come on. This is a serious moment we don't need. And that's kind of the theme throughout. I mean, we start with a huge battle with Poe and the Dreadnought, and Poe he kind of does Poe. He cracks jokes, but then Hux gets into it, and it's like, okay, this is over the top. and the porks and just everything. Everything, for the most part, I think was just like, I don't want to say everything. I'm sorry. Everything was good, but not everything needed to be there. So then the next biggest point, which everybody probably will talk about, Cantino Bite, the Las Vegas Planet. What I will say is none of it was needed. And I mean none of it. I mean Benicio del Toro. I mean Kelly Marie Tran, who is Rose. Her talking about the most on-the-nose societal political issues about rich war profiteers, gambling, and cruelty to animals and slave. It's so on the nose. In a blockbuster, people come for the movie. They don't come for these commentaries. And so when you do the commentary, it needs to be smart. It needs to be subtle. And this was so on the nose. So I hated that. And I hated the relationship between Rose and Finn. None of it needed to be done. And Benicio del Toro's character, I guess, is DJ. They never call him that. Stuttering and not being the real code breaker, but yet he can get out of jail anytime he wants. So why was he ever in jail? All of it just didn't work for me, and I wish it was all cut out. The CGI was bad with the animals. Every single thing in that was just too over the top. And the last part I'll say for my negatives, performance-wise, I thought this movie was amazing. I thought Mark Hamill as Luke was more than what you can expect from Mark Hamill, who hasn't been doing this in a while. And I thought Leia, Carrie Fisher's last performance as Princess Leia, was very quietly powerful, if I could use that phrase. But the two negatives I have, General Hux and Rose. So Domhnall Gleeson, who I thought was very good in The Force Awakens, turned into a joke this movie. Turned into completely incompetent. And it starts with that humor I was talking about, where he is going back and forth with Poe, not realizing he's trying to bait him. And just everything after that. When Snoke dies, and there's a scene where Hux sees Snoke, he's dead. He sees Kylo knocked out. He wants to shoot Kylo, but he puts his gun away when Kylo wakes up. He's just like, what'd you do to Snoke? So what happened? Our Supreme Leader's dead. He's so whiny and annoying. It's just like, oh my God, I can't stand this character. And then I like the character of Rose the way they wrote it. I'm not going to be sugarcoating it. Kelly Marie Tran overacted this part. And she's a YouTuber. She's from YouTube and all that. And this is her first big break. She did not come up to par with the rest of the performances. I thought her portrayal as Rose was way too overacted. And I didn't like much about it. A lot of the Cantino bite plays into that, and that's not her fault. But I just don't like her character. And then her trying to fall in love with Finn, like out of love. Love is strong. You love Finn and you've been with him less than a day. It's just not, is bad to me. All right. So let's talk about some of the Easter eggs in this movie though. Some Star Wars-esque Easter eggs, excuse me. Number one, when we cut to Rey handing Luke the lightsaber, this was a moment every fan talked about since the end of The Force Awakens. It's been years and we've been speculating. And Luke tosses it over his shoulder and just walks away. A lot of people are talking about this. For me, it was weird, but at the same time, I understood it. It was very bittersweet. Because on one hand, it's like, again, after all this drama built up, it's just, yoink, I don't care. But on the other side, I really felt like it was the director saying, screw you to all the fans. You've been coming up with your theories and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Throw it all away. This movie is not what you think. And I smiled. I remember smiling the first time I saw it. And I was like, okay, I see you, Rian Johnson. But at the same time, I was just like, did we need that type of yucky joke in that moment? So we got a nice Easter egg because that's the lightsaber that did a lot of damage emotionally and physically to Luke Skywalker. Now, jumping towards the end, Kylo, when they're at Crate and they're fighting the Resistance, the Millennium Falcon comes in with Rey and he's just like, blast that piece of junk out of the sky. And that's one of the best things, which I didn't say, but I love Adam Driver's Kylo. I did not like him in Force Awakens, but I think his character arc really came full circle, and it really was enriched by the performance of Adam Driver in this movie. Now, there's some parts where he was whiny baby Kylo again, but you see that he's pure emotion. He's driven by his emotion, and that was one of the ones. But it was great because the Millennium Falcon not only represents the rebels and beating the First Order and, you know, all that, and the Empire, it also represents Han Solo, his dad, and he can't shake killing him because it tore him apart. And so he absolutely wants to destroy it and get rid of it, you know, kill the past. Or, sorry, you know, move on past. Kill it if you can. But anyway, moving past that, we get Rey. So there's the moment where the last 4 people in the Resistance are trying to escape, and they're blocked by all these rocks. And then Rey says, moving rocks. And that's a callback to, you know, Luke training on Dagobah with Yoda. And she actually moves all the rocks. So I thought that was a cool little callback. And, you know, even though we didn't see a lot of her training, I just thought that was kind of her passage into being a Jedi. And then at the end, which I didn't realize to the second time, the books that the sacred Jedi text in the tree, they were actually taken by Rey. So when Finn is going to find a blanket for Rose at the end of the movie, and he opens the drawer, you see the books, the ancient text in there. And I didn't realize it to the second time. Like, oh crap, Rey saved those books. And even though we had the earlier scene where Yoda strikes the tree with lightning and burns it and says, move on, Rey has the book, so she's going to be able to learn. And I'll kind of go back to that. Yoda was a big Easter egg. People didn't expect to see him. It was the puppet Yoda. It was the goofy Yoda from the original, not the CGI from the prequels and all that good stuff. And it was interesting. I mean, I love Yoda. I don't care what version of Yoda. I love him. He's wise. He brings, you know, everything back to the ground. And so him interacting with Luke was good. And a lot of people are just like, Force Ghosts kind of just hang out with you. But he said, miss you. I have, young Skywalker. And so I don't think you've been seeing this Force Ghost a lot. I think he came at the right time to lead Luke to the right place that he needed to be. And then speaking of Luke, Luke dies. I don't like it. I don't like the way they did it. I get he's looking at the horizon, the sunset, whatever, with the 2 moons, and it harkens back and all that good stuff. I just feel like him dying facing Kylo, very much like Ben Kenobi did, giving himself up, was cool with me. That was absolutely cool. But when we find out that Luke is actually on the island using the new force projection, I'm like, okay, well then he should survive. Cause yeah, he's tired and he's drained, but he can survive that. And they just let him float off. And it's always confused me how you can have Jedis just randomly dissipate and disappear while other people just straight up die. And I don't get that. I don't understand that death. Nothing harmed him. He wasn't shot. He wasn't stabbed. He didn't fight. And so why should he die? Now the concept of him wrapping up and sacrificing himself to pass the torch, let the resistance respark, all that is cool. I just don't like the fact they killed him. He should have just stayed alive, especially when you know that Carrie Fisher is no longer with us, so you can't use Leia unless you recast her. I don't know. So, speaking of recasting the future, what did we learn from this movie? The Broom Kid, as Collider and Smokes called him. The kid at the end, the very end shot, is this kid that we saw in Cantino Bite. He's a slave. He got that anger in him against his master. He's ready to protect the animals when Finn tries to steal them. And then he helps them escape. And at the end, he has the rebel ring, but he has the Force. So he pulls the broom to him slightly with the Force and then looks out to the sky, kind of wanting to be a Jedi. And so with this kid, I understand that there's the spark of the new rebels. There's Rey. There's the stories of Luke and how he stood up to a whole army. All of this, Luke says this is just the beginning of the war. The rebellion is reborn. And there's also a line where they send out the distress signal from Crate, but nobody answers. Nobody cares about them anymore. And they don't believe. And so Luke and Rey start the spark that is going to get people to care again. I get that. And this kid represents somebody that cares. But at the same time, I came into this movie much like I came into Logan, or like I remember Logan. Logan was all about there's no mutants. We haven't seen mutants in decades. Nobody has mutant powers. They don't exist. And I kind of came into this like where, yeah, we got Rey who's super powerful, but other than that, we don't have Force users anymore. People don't do the Force. There's no Jedi. There's nobody training. There's, regular people. Like maybe you were Force sensitive, but nobody is out there using the Force. And so when you saw a kid with the Force, to me, I thought that was important. I thought that meant he was somebody, and like we saw him like 5 times, including the ending shot. So I'm like, who is this kid? Another mystery. But listening to other people's reviews and spoilers, they don't seem to care. So maybe it's just me. I don't know if I'm freaking out, but I think he's important. Rey and Finn, I already kind of talked about it. Finn is not into Rose. Rose kisses him and Finn doesn't really care much. And the first thing Finn says when he wakes up is, Rey. And then Poe asks him, you must have 1,000 questions. And the only thing he says is, where's Rey? He's very single-minded on Rey. And Rey, at the same time, she's telling Chewie, if you get to the Resistance, ask them the status, ask them how Finn is. And then when she leaves to fight Kylo, she says to Chewie, tell Finn, and he talks Chewbacca, and we don't know what he says, but she's like, yeah, tell him that. They're setting up this mystery of something between them. And then when Rey and Finn meet, that embrace, that hug is not friendly. That's more than friends. And so I really think that Rey and Finn are going to end up together. And while there might be a love triangle, they might kill Rose. I don't know. I just don't think he likes Rose in that way. And Finn and Rey are going to end up together. Because even Rey was looking at Finn cover her with the blanket, and she's a little jealous. She's like, that's my man. And so I just think that's how we're going to end up with that. Now, Rey and Kylo, we find out Rey's parents are nobody. And Kylo says they shows you off for trash. You don't have a place in this story. And that was so meta. You don't have a place in the Star Wars story. But you're not nothing to me. Let's join together and create a new order. But she also says, join me and join the light. And they make very clear distinctions. I'm on the light side, you're on the dark side. And they kind of go from there. So this whole thing is moving towards a clash. While there's a lot to talk about the next episode and what's next, you can't deny Rey and Kylo on a collision course. No more Snoke, no more Luke, no more manipulation. It's just these two on a collision course. And then Kylo and Hux. The last thing I'll say is that I think Hux is setting up for a double cross on Kylo. A lot of people talk about Kylo asserting himself as the alpha. I'm not exactly sure because Hux can't stand Kylo. Kylo, pure emotion. Fire all the weapons at that man. Fire all the ships at that at that ship, and he's not strategic, he's not tactical, but Hux is. And Hux is like, you know what, you got force powers, but I'm the real dude in charge. And so I don't think Hux is going to bow down. I don't think Hux is going to die. I think Hux is actually going to set up a double cross where he can either help Kylo or let him get trapped, and he's going to let him get trapped, or he's going to set him up. But one way or the other, I think Hux is going to make a power play for the First Order. Because, again, remember, Hux helped get all these kids in as slaves, and they made them stormtroopers, and he bought all these weapons, and he's the one that runs the army. And so I think there's going to be a point where Hux takes control on the power play. Kylo rebuilds himself, gets his strength back, and he wants to tear down the First Order and tear down the Resistance because he's just angry and pure evil. So I think that's what's going to end up happening. Anyway, I'm sure there's more spoilers to come. There's a lot to talk about. I'll probably remind myself of something later and do another video. But anyway, so far, tell me what you think of The Force Awakens. What are your spoilers? Like everything. Tell me what you think about this movie. There's so much. Thumbs up, subscribe, and if you heard it here, it's official canon.